Hello, friends. We are in a troubling time when it comes to misinformation. Here at Forbidden Knowledge News, I've always taken an unbiased, open-minded, and responsible approach to presenting my own theories, and the views of our guests do not reflect that of my own. This show is for entertainment purposes only, and any information presented during this show is a live-action role-play scenario. Conspiracies are definitely fun to discuss in a responsible way. My suggestion to everyone that has an audience and presents theories and possibilities should present them as such, and in no way present unsubstantiated information as truth. All that being said, enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Sebastien Martin. First, a couple of announcements. Check out our new affiliate, Brainsupreme. Brainsupreme contains the highest quality ingredients, so you can start your microdosing journey. Learn more at their website. Visit brainsupreme.co/discount/FKN15. You're going to get 15% off your order. That link is also right in the description. If you'd like to learn more, watch my recent episode with Brainsupreme founder Adam Schell. Also, you can help support Forbidden Knowledge News by watching the Forbidden documentary, Occult Louisiana. That's available on Tubi, Roku channel, and multiple streaming platforms. You can also get a Rokfin premium membership at rokfin.com/FKN Plus. Get access to our premium content. And you can also help by downloading our episodes through Spreaker. Today, I want to welcome Sebastien Martin. He is a Canadian entrepreneur born in France who has built international health food brands for almost 2 decades with offices in the United States, Canada, UK, and New Zealand. In November of 2011, he had a close encounter of a fifth kind with a non-human, which had a profound effects on his life as well as provided him with unique insights into the extraterrestrial phenomena and alien agendas. Sebastien, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thank you very much for having on your show.
Thanks so much for coming on, and thanks again for coming on short notice. I really appreciate that, and I'm glad we're finally able to get together and discuss your story and the insights and information you have to share. And I know there is a lot to discuss surrounding your experiences, and this is your first time on. Before we get into your story, just introduce yourself briefly to the audience.
Okay. So my name is Sebastien Martin. I was a businessman for many, many years, over 2 decades. And back in 2009, I had some visions that kept happening to me. And those visions were pretty vivid and quite, I would say, groundbreaking in the sense that it was prophetic visions that I was receiving, pretty vivid dreams as well. And so I was waking up in the middle of the night and I was recording them. I was writing my visions, and some of them were very, like, I would say random. Like I was seeing like a plane crash, or I was feeling like an earthquake, or another time where I was seeing this. This was the main one that really changed everything for me. Is in 2009. My wife at the time was pregnant, and so she was about 4 or 5 months pregnant. And in the middle of the night, I had this strange dream where it woke me up and I could see those beings following each other in the bedroom, and they were like bending, looking towards my child, like unborn child. And when the beings did what they were doing, they just raised up again and they just left. And so it was a procession of lives, like of like souls that were basically just happening. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And I remember being in bed and just like basically putting my hand like this and then observing what was going on. And I was receiving a message at the same time saying to me, "Don't worry, this is like normal procedure kind of thing. We just, it's no harm to the child or you, just like, just let it be." And so I remember keep saying that, and then it was a strange feeling because it's not like I was panicking or anything else. I was feeling pretty at peace with the whole event. And when I was having prophetic visions around the same time, it was the same idea. I was seeing things and I was hearing things at the same time. So one night I had a vision of a man being shot, or like not shot. He was actually killed somehow. I didn't see the actual event itself. I only saw the event prior to that. So I could see this man being in a car, and then I only saw his face because the window went down, and I was observing it through a scope, and I was in the body of a man observing the whole action through a scope, and I could see clearly the face of the man when the window rolled down. And so it was a very basic vision, and then the vision stopped, and then the message that came with it was Prime Minister assassinated. So I woke up in the morning and I just decided to look on Google Images about those keywords. I wrote down Prime Minister assassinated, and then the face of this man appeared on Google Images, called Rafik Hariri, and he was the Prime Minister of Lebanon for many years, and so he was a retired Prime Minister. And that man died a few years prior to the vision I was having. So I never knew anything about the man or about the situation, but I clearly saw what was going on. And after that, basically life went on. I still grew my business, and I decided to ignore all the stuff that was happening to me for many years. And in 2016, I believe, so many years after that, I decided to go on a radio show to talk about all of my experiences, including what happened to me back in 2011. So back in November of 2011, my life completely changed. So I was having those visions like nonstop from 2009 to 2011, and to the point where in 2011 I was having about 3 visions per day, so quite intense. And
these visions would just come out of nowhere, or would they be
pretty much random during the day, like I said, or at night. And in November of 2011, I woke up one morning and I clearly remember the face of this being. He looked humanoid, like Nordic looking, but he was actually Pleiadian. But he was very, clear in my head. Like I remembered his face with my eyes wide open, and I could see him from his torso and his face, and he was looking straight at me with a big smile, and the cheekbones were high up, and he had like wavy hair, very Californian surfer dude kind of thing, very muscular and with big eyes, and the eyes were like 3 times the size of our human eyes. So that's why I knew he was not like normal, like a human being. But somehow he was very happy to see me. That's the impression that he gave me. Like he recognized me, but I could not recognize him. So the vision of his being stayed with me for the whole day. And by the way, it was on the 11th of November of 2011. So 11/11/11. And on that specific day, no one was working in my office. So I went to my office. I had an office space on my land. I had like 13 acres of land. And so I had employees normally coming into the office and working there and leaving. And on that day, I decided to do some extra work in my office space. So I went in, and so while I was looking at my laptop and I was looking through my window behind my laptop, I could still see his face. Like he was still in my field of vision. And so that was kind of disturbing. And I was wondering why I was still seeing that face. So after work, I went back home and it was time for dinner. And so I decided to meditate and sit down on my sofa after dinner. So my wife went to bed with I think my daughter was probably about 2 years old, I guess, at that point. And I sat down. I poured myself a chamomile tea that was, sipping on the countertop in the kitchen. And so I was waiting for that, and then I sat down on the sofa in my living room, and I closed my eyes, and I decided to meditate on the whole experience to see what was going on, and then I could feel this whirlwind of energy going around me, and all of a sudden the whirlwind or the energy stopped. So I just opened my eyes, and when I opened my eyes, that the being that I was seeing for the whole day was actually physically standing up right in front of me, in front of my library shelf. And so that was obviously shocking to me, and I was trying to stand up. I remember I was sitting down, and then my first reaction was to stand up, feeling that someone was invading my private space, and I had to defend the household basically. And but I couldn't move. I was completely frozen, and my hands were like stuck on the side of my on my body. And I remember looking at that being, and then the moment I saw that being, that's when I couldn't move and I couldn't speak. I was completely frozen. And you could say that when people are having sleep paralysis, it was not a sleep. I was not sleeping. I was like fully awake, really wide awake. Like my mind was like buzzing. I was definitely wide awake, and I could see this being. And I was panicking at first, right? The first impression that you have is like you don't know what's going on. There's a strange being in my living room, and I just need to react. But I could not react. I could not do anything but just like having those really fast, thoughts in my head. And then that being started to introduce himself the way he was looking at me in my dream, or like when I woke up in the morning, same bright smile, same big eyes. But this time he was in full form, and he was wearing this blue outfit that was tied to the skin from up and down, very simple outfit. And I couldn't see any chains or signs or nothing that could indicate, anything else to me. Just simple being. And so, first thing he said to me was, "My name is Zor, and I'm from the Galactic Alliance." That's what he said to me, and that meant nothing to me whatsoever. And so he said that to me telepathically. And I had lots of questions in my head. And I remember having a chat with him and discussions on, basically mainly for some reason, all I remember, again, a lot of things happened, but I don't remember most of it. And so when I was talking to that being, for as far as I remember, is I was discussions about my visions and to see if my visions were related to what I was experiencing at that moment, because at the time I was seeing a lot of earthquakes and natural disasters, which were quite stressful to me, and I had a lot of anxiety around that. And in fact, the week prior to this, I already booked an appointment with a clinical hypnotherapist to discuss my visions. And so this was not part of the agenda. This was kind of unexpected to me. And so while he was talking to me and I was having this discussion, all of a sudden the discussion ended. I don't know when exactly, but it ended. The notions of space and time completely vanished when I spoke to that being. Like everything around me kind of disappeared. And so all I could see was him, and that's it. And so when I remember the last thing I saw was him disappearing in a haze. It's almost like he was more of an hologram. So whatever appeared to me as being real was more of an holographic being that was right in front of me. Like, I don't think he was there physically, but there was a blue halo around him. That's what I remember as well. And so when I saw that and then he vanished after a while, I decided to stand up. And I was like, I was questioning myself, thinking, am I losing my mind? Am I turning crazy? And so I was still thinking, and I was walking back in silence to the kitchen to grab my chamomile tea that was on the countertop. And to me, it felt like maybe I was talking to him for like 15 minutes. That's the impression that he gave me. When I went to the kitchen and I grabbed my mug, I realized that the tea was cold when I put it to my lips. And so I looked at the stove right away, and then the digital clock showed that I had 2.5 hours of missing time.
Oh.
So that kind of struck me as being weird because it was late in the night and it was getting later in the night. And I really didn't know what happened, like, or how long this was going on for. Like, I really believe that the conversation was very short. That's basically what I had as an experience. And so fast forward to 2016, I went through countless hours of clinical hypnotherapy. I received more information from that. And while I was discussing those visions with the therapist, she gave me some answers. I had some more information arising from this encounter. But in all honesty, that was only part of what happened to me at that time, because while I was having those visions, I also realized that I was able to practice what's called remote viewing, but without the training that most people do when they go through remote viewing. I went through some seminars on that and everything else, but I just naturally had this ability to remote view what was happening elsewhere. And I believe my visions kind of led me in that direction, but I really didn't know. I could not control like space and time. I could not differentiate, for example, a real vision of something that was going to happen with an hypothetical vision that may happen. Now I know the differences between all of that, and for what could happen on different timelines as well. So I had enough experiences over time that now I can differentiate the different timelines. That's also very important because when I first came on a radio show to discuss my experiences, I mentioned the experience I had with about Rafik Hariri, the ex-prime minister of Lebanon. And when this happened, I had a lot of followers on Facebook. And so I kind of accepted pretty much everybody coming on. And I just, basically just didn't really segregate the scammers from whoever. Like, I was accepting like thousands of people at the time. And in those days, I think you could have had like 10,000 followers, and that was fine. I think Facebook reduced that amount since. But while I was not checking anybody on my Facebook, I was just accepting all of the friendships. One day, I had a vision after those shows, and I knew who that person was, even if I never met that person. And so I decided to contact through Messenger that person and said, I believe your life is in danger. And the vision I had was about being in the body of that person. And that would happen a lot in the future, like about me having remote viewing experiences, but seeing events through the eyes of someone else, not through my own eyes, or floating in the air and just like seeing an event. That happens too, but it's mostly happening through the eyes of someone else. So I was in the body of this woman. I was in the backseat of a car, and all of a sudden I could see that the people in the crowd were going in one way, but there were a group of people that were walking in the opposite direction. And there were a group of like 5 men, and I could see that there was one man in particular in the middle that struck me as being the leader. And that the person who was observing that scene, again, it was on me, it was someone else, but I was feeling that person knew the people in the crowd, right? So, and that's what gave me the initiatives to contact that person that I believe saw that event. And I explained, I said, I believe your life is in danger. And so I didn't hear anything from that person for like 3 days. And then after a while, she sent me a picture of that same man. And she said, is that the man that you saw? And I said, yes, that's the one. And she said, well, that's good because I'm now in Jordan. I'm no longer in Iraq. And this is exactly where the scene happened. So that person was an undercover CIA personnel who basically was stationed in Iraq, in Baghdad, and her safe house was discovered by the government of Iraq, and so they were trying to put her into custody basically. But she fled the country 3 days prior to this event that I was seeing for her basically, or through her eyes, which was timely, I guess.
Yeah.
And so that person started to pay interest to me because I was obviously, discussing the events of Rafik Hariri on a radio show, and she was asked to follow me on Facebook to basically just check what I was doing and how would I've known those details that no one else knew. The fact that Rafik Hariri rolled down his bomb-proof car window was kind of an event, or I would say a clue as to why he died on that day when he should have not died, right? So those details were not mentioned in the media, and also the fact that the organized crime or the people involved in that assassination were organized, and one of the men on the rooftop was also arrested, and I believe was, well, not arrested. He was indicted, but he's not arrested because he's at large still. But the fact was, I was able to provide those kind of clues that no one else knew about at the time, and that's why I became like kind of a person of interest in their eyes. And so I had to be followed, which I didn't know. I was so innocent about the whole thing at the time that I kind of explained or talked about my experiences without thinking of any kind of repercussions. And so that's what came clear to me, that those people were following me or had an interest in me. And then that person that I saved, I would say, or helped at the time, started to question me and test me, I would say. So she sent me some newspaper articles, or she was telling me, oh, can you see what happened there? And so there was one example of two women that committed suicide in Jordan and jumped off the roof of a building. And that's the main article talking about that. And for me, I was like saying, well, those two women, when I was reading the article, and I was again in the body of these two women, and I knew what was going on. And as I received more data or more information to do with these two women, and I said, no, on that day, there were two soldiers, and they pushed them off the top of the building. And so they died. And one soldier left from the back of the building. It was a building in construction. And the other soldier left from the front. And the response from that person was, well, we actually knew about one soldier. We were not aware of the second one. That's the kind of feedback I was receiving from the type of remote viewing I was practicing with her at the time. And so as time went on, I was tested on more events that she already knew about. And I was also involved or getting involved into more of her life. I don't know exactly why at the time. I knew after the facts why I kind of had a connection with that person. But at the time, it was unknown to me. And I was just thrilled to be able to practice my remote viewing techniques, I guess, or abilities, which was new to me. And so I wasn't really searching for that. I was just happy to provide whatever was coming my way, and then happy to see things and be able to have validations going on after the facts.
Right.
So that person got involved more and more into overseas missions. So she was traveling all over the Middle East. And so for me, I was kind of living experiences through her eyes, became very much involved in what she was doing on a day to day. And so at some point, she was in Turkey, and I said, "Oh, you are in a meeting, and I can see lots of officials having cigars, and you are in that room, and you are talking to them, and this guy right in front of you." Who is very hairy? He has lots of hair on his chest, on his, like a unshaven guy, big guy, and he's looking at you. And for my vision, I was basically looking at him through her eyes, and then I jumped from her body into his body, and I was able to see what he was thinking at the same time. So I said, the guy doesn't like you, and he wants to harm you. And she replied to me saying, "No, he's an ally. There's no reason why he would want to hurt me." And she just realized after tapping his phone that he was trying to organize a kidnapping for what was going on in Paris later on, after the event. So that meeting already happened a few hours prior to when I contacted her. And so that was quite timely as well. But it happened only a few hours prior. And he was planning to kidnap her in Paris and ask for money because he was working for another nation other than Turkey. And so, and since she was an agent, he was trying to look for some money, basically, ransom money. So that's basically how I was able to intertwine with the agencies, like starting with the CIA and then other agencies afterwards, because they were like the Five Eye agencies. So the Five Eye group involving like Australia, New Zealand, France. France was actually not part of the Five Eye organization, but they were kind of helping with like files and these sort of things. But England, so I got involved with like MI6 as well, and Australian organizations, and then it went deeper into more like covert missions, black ops missions, and for things that happened in the past, including the first Gulf War and the second Gulf War in Iraq. So in those days, that agent was stationed in Iraq during the first and second Gulf Wars, and she saw the migration of artifacts, like all the stuff from museums, and we saw things from the Allies. Like we heard about those stories where a lot of these artifacts were sent overseas or stolen from different museums, and which since have been brought back into Iraq and other countries like Syria and these sort of things. But at the time, the biggest mission that was going on during the first and second Gulf Wars was the extraction of the Stargates in Iraq. And that's why I got heavily involved in that. So not so much during those missions at the time, because that was before my time, but I was definitely involved after the facts, because what was going on was when the Stargates was removed from southern Iraq, which was close to the summer palace of Saddam Hussein. Most of the allies that went there. So there were a lot of different soldiers involved in the extraction of the Stargate, the main Stargate that was in the southern Iraq. And that Stargate was made of a black stone that's not found on Earth. I don't know if you ever heard of the Black Pyramid that was found in Alaska. That's supposedly, used by the American soldiers or army. Have you heard of that by any chance?
No, I have not.
Okay, so that's another story. But so that ancient Stargate was predating the Sumerian culture. Yet the Sumerians were aware of that, because the area where the Stargate was found is also heavily, I would say, guarded, but also a lot of the locals are afraid of the location because of the electromagnetic field that's surrounding the area. There's a vortex there, and a lot of the locals are afraid of the electrical storms that are happening around there as well. But yet Saddam Hussein had an actual summer palace in that location. And he himself had direct contact with tall beings that were in the same area because they were going through the vortex and the Stargate. So it's, again, most people don't know this, but it might sound like science fiction or far-fetched, but Saddam Hussein had files in the basement of his summer palace that were predating the Sumerians, and he had catalogs of files to do with the what's called the secret space program. And so I got involved in that as well. But the fact was that the Stargate was removed by local soldiers, like Iraqi soldiers that were defecting and working with the U.S. Army, and so the British were involved, the Australians were involved, some Canadians as well. So Italians, lots of different countries were involved in that. So it's the 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 extraction of the Stargate was not so much identified as such. Like the Stargate was one of the other artifacts found in Iraq, and so they basically were able to extract it, put it in a box. So most of the people involved didn't know what was inside. They just removed another artifact from Iraq like any other. And so while it moved out of the country with the help of the Iraqi government, uh, the Stargate moved back to Europe in Bulgaria and was there in an underground US base for many, many years. And when the Stargate got moved, they realized that they could not make it work. And so over time, what I realized, and when I got involved, was to find out about the missing piece from the Stargate, because the structure itself was pretty much like a round Stargate, pretty much like what you see in the movie. But it was there were some movable pieces that were part of the puzzle. So they were like keys that you basically would insert into the Stargate, and then that would make it kind of work with the vortex inside. Inside the location, it was based on where the vortex was and the electromagnetic field. So the Stargate otherwise would just be like a piece of material that would not work on its own unless you recreated the actual site where it was originating from. The Sumerians, talking about the Sumerians, so the culture itself, since the date of the Sumerians, there's a secret society in Iraq that was created to protect the Stargate. And those are called the guardians of the Stargate, and there's a gatekeeper as well. So the gatekeeper was the guy in charge of moving that piece out of the Stargate and then moving it abroad, so it would not be falling in the eyes of the enemy, I would say, or the allies, our allies. And so the Stargate was rendered inefficient or useless with the removal of those pieces. And since then, I spoke to a few soldiers that were Black Ops soldiers that ended up searching for those species. And so I had extra validations. So you have to realize that I was asked to locate that piece or one piece, but there were many pieces out there, and there were many Stargates in the Middle Eastern countries. So that was just like one mission or one aspect of it.
Now, are you still working with these agencies at all?
No, so I stopped working for them a few years ago. So what happened was, to be honest with you, it was probably about 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I was tasked to locate the Stargate. So in order for me to locate that missing piece, I connected to the actual Stargate itself in Bulgaria. And when I did that, when I tried to look at the Stargate, I encountered a tall white reptilian alien being that was there. He was working alongside the US Army, and he was looking straight at me while I was remote viewing the Stargate. And so it kind of shocked me at first because that being was looking straight at me. And I wasn't there physically, obviously, but through the remote viewing experience, it was kind of live and I could see him. And right away, that same night, when I went to bed, because I stopped the vision or the remote viewing session as soon as that being saw me, because I felt very much like invaded in that sense. So I could see that that being could see right through me.
Right.
So when I went to bed that night, that was 5 years ago, I woke up with a pounding headache and a nosebleed. And it was this kind of undescribed for me. Like I heard about psychic attacks in the past, but I never believed them because I never experienced it. That was the first time I experienced a psychic attack to that level, and it really surprised me because I really believed that I was protected in a sense. And so when I was feeling attacked, I woke up and I decided to go downstairs like I was in my house. And I went downstairs and I sat down on my sofa. And I was in contact with other remote viewers at the time. So I was not just by myself, like doing the work. I was in touch with other remote viewers that were also doing the same work as me. And so we were kind of providing the informations to various agencies or agents. And sometimes we're working together, sometimes we're not working together. And so I contacted a few that I knew about, and I was describing what I was feeling or experiencing. And they were also experiencing the same thing as me, even if they were in other countries. And so that was kind of interesting because we're all experiencing the same attack at the same time. So that's when I got a clue about how those beings were working, which is connecting through one person, like me, for example, and then connecting through a network. So they were able to access my network of people through remote viewing or through the psychic attacks that they were targeting me with at the time. And so as I was feeling alone, I mean, obviously I was in touch with my friends and so on, but I was by myself and I was the one being attacked the most. And so I decided to meditate on that, and I was able to remote view that being again. And after many hours, like I would say 4 hours in total, at the end, I was able to access that being and through a tunnel, and I was able to see the top of his head. And I remember that very clearly because I could see his bald head, and he had a crete, like a protuberance on the top of his head, like a bony structure above, like the what we normally have as a skull, but he had an extra piece on the top there. And so I decided to blast him with white light energy to stop the connection. That's what I felt doing at the time, and everything stopped instantly. The pounding headache, the nosebleeds, everything stopped.
Oh, wow.
So I felt great about it at the time. I thought, wow, I won, kind of thing. A great feeling. And then a week later, exactly a week later, I went to New York for a board meeting, which was completely different from my business. And on that day, I decided to go to see a show on Broadway. And after the show, I walked back to my hotel bedroom. And as soon as I arrived, I got undressed. And as I removed my trousers, I just realized there was a scratch on the side of my leg. And it was a long scratch. It was not bleeding, but it was very red, and it looked probably like the first layer of epidermis got removed because it was pretty red. And, it felt obviously enough that I could feel it. And when I had a shower, and I went to bed. And then when I went to bed, that's when it all started. And I could feel the same feeling as I had a week prior, when I was attacked by that reptilian. And so at that point, I closed my eyes and I could see, because I didn't know exactly where it came from. And I don't, it felt different. It felt that the scratch I had on my leg, and it was a long scratch, that was not caused by anything that I scratched myself on. It was very recent. And if I scratched myself like that on a chair or something like that, I would have felt it. I didn't feel a thing. And so I kind of related that to an actual physical attack that someone, like those guns that they were using with ice bullets. that's kind of almost like the way it felt like. And so I didn't know what was the meaning of this, but when I closed my eyes and tried to look within, so I kind of in introspection, I was looking at myself inside of me, inside my body on a cellular level, and I could see some strange things floating in my bloodstream, and I felt like poisoned, basically. And so while I was in bed, I was trying to use my own Kundalini energy, all the stuff that I was obviously aware of at the time. I had many, many years to practice many techniques and learn about many techniques. One of them was to self-protect myself and try to look within and try to heal myself. And as I was doing that, I realized it was kind of pointless because it was out of my reach, and I was too far gone. And I really, the first time in my life, I had regrets, and I thought I would not be able to say goodbye to my children. I was really feeling that I was dying. That's the way it felt.
Wow.
Yeah, it was super intense. And so I was in bed and I passed out. I literally passed out after hours of trying to fight this. And then I woke up maybe 3 hours later, and it was early morning, and I felt like I had like a full night's sleep, like fully restored, perfectly fine, no weird feelings, nothing. I could really feel like I could just jump on the side of the street and then fly. It was that exhilarating as a feeling. It was so strange. And I came back to Canada, and while I was flying back on the airplane, I had a message. I received a message, and that was from those reptilians. And I knew where it came from. I didn't have to see them. I just knew. And the message was, if you leave us alone, we will let you be. That was the message. So it was kind of a warning, I guess. Yeah. But the feeling was also that my star family, that the being that came into my living room in 2011, was there to rescue me that night. And I had no memory of it. All I had was messages down the line that, yes, they were there to save me and restore me so I would be able to live again and just be fine. That was kind of the feeling that I had, or the message I received at the time. Right. So that's basically why after all of this, 5 years ago, I decided not to pursue those kind of missions. I was involved in more missions right after that for a very brief period of time. That was involving other kind of dark, morbid situations that I don't want to discuss today. And that's why I decided to pull myself away from all of this. And in the meantime, I had some other friends who were aware of my remote viewing experiences that asked for help, like for missing children and this sort of thing. So I did work with recently with the Bulgarian police on retrieving a child who was based in Bulgaria, and he vanished after having a small walk with his dad on the mountain. And after 9 days, I got contacted and to see if he was still alive. And yes, I saw him very much alive, which was kind of unusual at the time, especially after kidnapping or like when people disappeared. Most of the times they don't come back. But in that case, I saw him very well alive, and I worked with the Bulgarian police because the man who got in touch with me at the time also worked with a remote viewer from MI6. So he was well connected, and that person from MI6 also had the same vision as mine. So we're seeing the same events from that boy's perspective, and that's why it intrigued the Bulgarian police, because since they had a clue as to where potentially he was, we got in touch with the Bulgarian police, and we had a Zoom meeting with them. The man who contacted me acted as a translator, and while being on the Zoom call with that policeman, I provided more details. And I said that the boy was going to be moved the next day through the border in a van. And I described the occupants of the van. I provided part of the license plate of the van, and which road they were going to be using to leave the country. And I didn't know anything about Bulgaria. So I had to pull up a map. And from a map, I could see the road in question that was going on a 45-degree angle, and I could see the direction of the van heading out from the country to extract the boy from Bulgaria. And so the police, based on my instructions, placed a roadblock on that specific border. And the next day, after having that discussion, the boy was found on that same mountain that he disappeared from. And you have to realize that at the time they had over 1,500 people searching for that boy on that mountain. They had search and rescue people, police people, they had dogs, drones, helicopters, you name it. And regular civilians were searching for that boy. And the place where he was found was spotted and searched many times over. Even like the day prior to that, the search and rescue people walked through that valley or that gully where he was found, and he had no shoes on, and he was barely dehydrated, and he was not hungry. He had food in his stomach after 9 days. What you have to realize is that 11-year-old boy at the time was also heavily autistic and could not fend for himself. There's no way that boy would have had survival skills to stay there and being able to fight the cold and not die of hypothermia. The boy was perfectly fine. So while I provided some clues, more clues about involved, she was living in the UK at the time. And so I said that the mom organized the kidnapping using some local smugglers. Oh. And so she paid them. And so after that, the Bulgarian police decided to contact her and ask her to come back to Bulgaria for interviewing her. And she refused. So she never came back to Bulgaria after that. But that's the update I got from the Bulgarian police at the time. But the country, the politicians at the time, decided to use that disappearance and that search and rescue mission as a political ploy to get re-elected. So they say, the coalition of the Bulgarian people, made the country strong and solid. And so they kind of elevated that boy as a status of hero for having survived the cold and the hunger for 9 days or 10 days. Yeah. It was kind of, comical to know how the story got changed. Yeah. But I got in touch with the dad, and we are still friends on Facebook. And he's aware of my involvement in the whole story. And there's nothing he can do. He can't talk about what happened because the political situation in Bulgaria. But that's one of those like happy stories when the child is rescued or everything is good.
Yeah, that is so fascinating. If we could, I would like to go back to some of the information that you were able to retrieve through your hypnosis sessions and your remote viewing about the nature of the extraterrestrial agenda, the encounters that you had, and maybe a bigger picture of what's unfolding.
Sure. So I told you that when I did the hypnotherapy sessions, when I first went to see the therapist, I didn't want to address the aliens. I talked to her about the visions I was having. And so she said to me, well, yeah, we can talk about that. I'm not close to visions and discussing those things. And so she regressed me back to to do past lives first. And so I had some interesting experiences with past lives. And then when so for me, like, you have to realize that when I first got hypnotized, I've never been hypnotized in the past. So for me, it was a new experience, and I did not truly believe in hypnosis, even if I kind of volunteered to do it. For me, I was more looking to someone who could talk to me and guide me through that. And maybe I was getting some answers, but I was questioning all the visions I was having. I was questioning all the memories that I believe would have been false memories. I don't know. I couldn't tell. For me, it was so vivid, and I felt like I was wide awake when I was being hypnotized, that I didn't really believe that what I was seeing was true, because I thought it was my own imagination. I truly believed that what I was seeing was just a fabrication, because I was so conscious, I was so aware but I could not understand the difference between the subconscious and the being conscious. For me, while I was being relaxed, I was just seeing things while being relaxed. That's pretty much it. And then I had a very vivid imagination. That's what I truly believed.
Mm.
So the therapist showed me some articles about, how they could identify the people under hypnosis, that the areas of the brain that are being triggered under MRI that are different from the imagination. It was actually memory, and I was remembering what was happening to me, and so I found that interesting. But when I first got hypnotized, like I said, it was about my past lives, and then we slowly transitioned to the reason why I was having those visions. And so she asked me, I said, "Do you remember when you first had visions?" And I said, "Well, yes, in 2009, I had those kind of visions and everything else." And I said, "Okay, but when you were younger, like, did you have any visions?" And then I remember that when I was in high school, and I was 16 years old, I used to have very strong visions and prophetic visions of classmates and these sort of things, where I was seeing a classmate who I was in a Spanish class at the time, and during break, I wrote down on a piece of paper the vision I was just having about this classmate, and I was seeing her leaving school on a scooter and being basically basically pushed or colliding with a car that was I couldn't see the driver or anything else, but I could see her falling off the scooter and being hit by a car. That's pretty much what I saw. So I described that, wrote that on a piece of paper, and then put it into a pen case. And then during the break, she came back to her seat, looked at the note, and so who did that? And then so I said it was me. And then she, wasn't happy with that, obviously. And a year later, that accident happened.
Mm.
And she never came back to school because she became paraplegic. She did not die. I saw her dead, but she did not die. But the accident that happened was provoked by the Spanish teacher I was having the lesson a year prior. So during the same class, that's the man who basically collided with her on a scooter. And so right after that, the people in my class or her friends looked at me in a very different way, because almost like they were scared of my ability for what I was seeing.
Mm.
And so the therapist said, "Okay, well, let's explore that and go back to when you were 16 years old." And I said, "Okay." So we decided to focus on that. And I remember being under hypnosis and just looking at my feet. Every time I was being hypnotized, I was asked to describe or observe my feet, and then trying to see everything of what I was wearing, like pants-wise, or looking at my hands and these sort of things. So I was looking at my feet, and I could see I was wearing some sneakers, and then I could see I was wearing some jeans, and looking at my hands, and I just knew I was in my own body. And I looked around, and I was on my school grounds, and I was a boarder, so I was staying there at night during the week. And so I was looking at the grounds, and I could see the school grounds, and it was at night. And then all of a sudden, I looked back at my feet, and I said, "Oh, my feet are leaving the ground." And I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was just describing what I was seeing. I was not feeling anything. I was just like observing as a third person almost, but leaving it as a first person. And I was like, elevated. I was going up in the air. And then I said, "Oh, I'm being put back on my back. I'm just going on my back in midair." And I was looking forward, like towards my feet as I was lying down, and I could see there was a spacecraft in the air with a hatch open, like with bright light coming through. And I was heading in feet first. And as I was going in, I was basically on hovering in the spacecraft, and I could see those tall gray aliens, almost like whitish color as well, grayish color, that were there on my right hand side, and I could feel maybe some behind me as well, and more on my left side. But I could only focus on those three beings that were on my right hand side. And I remember being there, being paralyzed, and then hearing them arguing with each other. Like they were doing like whoa, 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 that kind of sound. It was a weird sound. And so the therapist said to me, "Oh, can you tell me what they are talking about?" And I said, "Well, how do I know that we don't speak the same language?"
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "But that's okay because under hypnosis, using your subconscious, you can ask them in English and they will reply to you telepathically in English." And so I said, "Okay." And so I asked that. I said, "What are you arguing about?" And the reply they gave me was, "We can't touch you because you have already been tampered with or manipulated somehow."
Hmm.
So that I repeated that to the therapist, and she thought that was strange as well. And so she said, "Well, what does it mean? Can you ask them?" So I asked them, and no replies. I don't hear back. So I said, "They're not answering." So okay. And then she said, and this is again what really changed everything from my perspective. And to that point, I still believe that whatever I was seeing was just a fabric of my own imagination. And so there's the reason why I was not feeling anything and I was not taking it seriously and I was very cool about it is because I really didn't believe that whatever I was seeing was real. But when I spoke to those beings and I said, if you can't tell me why, I'm here, why don't you just like show me the reason why I'm here? And then all of a sudden, sorry, my mistake. Before that, they showed me some holograms or symbols, and the symbols were again strange to me, and I didn't know what those symbols meant. There was like an upside down triangle. There was like an eight pointed star and then a staff, like a stick, a strange looking stick with like almost like a diamond on the top. And when I was seeing those holographic symbols, again, I wrote them down, but it didn't mean anything to me. So when I asked them what those symbols meant, this is when again they didn't say anything to me. But when I said, "Can you show me what those symbols mean?" Um, that's when everything changed for me because that's when I blacked out under hypnosis, and I felt like I was going backwards in time or space or whatever, and I was going backwards. And then all of a sudden, I woke up, still under hypnosis. I opened my eyes, and I could see that observing my hands and my feet, that I was in the body of a baby. And so that was a very strange experience because I was no longer on the spaceship, but I was inside almost like a bath-like, structure that the water was black and there were some hinges on the side and there were like symbols. The symbols were, and above me was a dome-like structure still attached. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can
Hello?
hear you.
Yes, sorry. So there was a dome-like. Okay, so there was a dome-like structure above me, and through the dome, it was very opaque. I could not see anything, and so I could see people moving around, but I could not see anybody in particular or details. So the therapist then said to me, "Okay, well, can you come out of your body to see where you are?" And so the next thing I remember was I projected myself out of my body through hypnosis, and I described my environment. And I said, "Oh, I can see there's like a UFO-like structure underneath me. It's very cubic in shape, almost like Tetris parts, like lots of cubes attached together, and it's long and it looks dark. I couldn't say what color exactly, but it was dark color. And underneath that was the Earth, and so I was floating in space, in dark space, and I could see that structure floating like in space, and then the Earth was underneath it, and then I could see myself inside the structure. So I knew I was directly connected to the physical body inside the spacecraft. So the therapist panicked. I could hear it in her voice. And I said, no, go back in your body, go back in your body. So I came back in my body as a baby. And then she said, can you please now go out of your body, but stay in the room so you can see, what's around you. So I did that. And then I saw the same type of beings that the man Zoe came to see me in my living room, and they looked the same. There was a man, there was a kind of a beard, and almost looked like Zeus, the figure of Zeus with a trident, and yeah, she was holding a sort of a trident. But again, same idea: big eyes, high cheekbones, and pretty stern-looking guy. And there was a woman with him. And both of these beings had the same blue outfit as Zoe was wearing at the time when he came to see me. And the upside down triangle with 3 black dots on each point was on their uniform, on their chest. So they had that, both of them had that symbol. So that's basically what I was seeing, and I was describing them as almost like they knew me, like those beings knew who I was on that spaceship, but I had no idea why I was there. I just described that. And so to me, it felt kind of strange because this was new. Like the whole of the inside of the spacecraft felt like living, like almost like nanotechnology. Everything was alive. Mm-hmm. It was a strange feeling. So the flooring, the walls, everything had different types of energy or feel. It was not like a physical structure. Everything was movable, in a sense. And a 6-month-old baby. And I remember that I was missing my mom. I was actually in my body as a baby, thinking I was panicking. And as a 30-year-old man, like 35-year-old man at the time, I was in my body and I was panicking, and I was crying as a human being. I was crying as an adult because of that experience, and that was a new feeling because, like I said, going back to when I was 6 months old as a baby and having that kind of a shock of an experience that was not expected, I could no longer deny that what I was experiencing was feeling real, and I could relate to the experience, even if I could not remember, obviously, at the time. But what you have to realize is when I was born, I was also born like in real life, like I was born without the first layer of my epidermis. So I was kind of raw on my skin. I was red. And it took about 6 months for my skin to grow back. So that was kind of a genetic disorder that I had in the womb. And my DNA got repaired over time. But at the time, the doctors in my family, like nobody knew what was going on or what it was. And they called it Lenermusus, which was like a disease that they could relate to, thinking, oh, yeah, it's a skin condition, it's genetic, whatever. And if you look at all these cases of Lenermusus, most of these kids who grow don't exceed 5 feet tall. They are quite rachitic, they're pretty skinny, and they don't live long, which is not me. Like I'm 6'2" and I'm over 200 pounds. I'm not small. So whatever happened to me was definitely not what I had. Or if that's what I had, I got cured on that day, because then I got better. After 6 months old, my skin came back and I was healed. Everything was fine. So then that's when I remembered that maybe those tall gray aliens, when they say they can't touch me or use me or manipulate me in any kind, is because I was already being manipulated by those aliens, by those beings. And so it's a very convoluted story when you think about it, because it goes from like it's not a straightforward story. It goes from those tall gray aliens to those Pleiadians, and somehow I got involved with all of them. And why those tall gray aliens wanted to abduct me, I have no idea. But the fact was, that's what I've experienced.
Now, did either the Downloads or the regression give you any information about the bigger picture of what we're experiencing as a whole with the
Yeah.
aliens?
Yes and no. I mean, basically, the the experiences I had with them was very, again, like talking about different timelines, right? So like when I was seeing earthquakes and all of these visions, like those were like hypothetical visions where it could happen, but it may not happen, or it could happen on different timeline. So for me, it felt very real. But at the time, like I said, I could not differentiate false timelines from real timelines. Now I can. And so when I was told that the aliens would potentially have a contact with us or whatever, like none of that happened to me. Like they never said to me, "We're going to be coming on Earth and rescuing the planet," or none of that happened. That's never been a message I received. In fact, what my star family said to me at the time, after experiencing what I've experienced through hypnosis and all of that, they said to me, "Well, since you are aware of who we are and who you are, even if you're not supposed to be having that experience." So when Zoe came to me, it was kind of a surprise and against the rules. So he was not supposed to be interacting with me or impacting my personal life on this earth. But yes, it happened. Somehow it happened. He came to see me, and that kind of awoken more stuff for me, like the memories that I had and who I was as an entity or as a human being. Everything kind of came together as a whole. So I kind of know who I am and where I came from and all of this. But the fact was, my star family said, "Well, because now you know who you are, your mission, again, I love the term mission, your mission is now to awaken the star seeds of this planet." And in all honesty, at the time, I was doing interviews and all that, like in 2016. Even to that day, I was kind of left in a blur as to know what to do with that, because they didn't give me a manual as to know how to awaken the star seeds of this planet. Um, I was not into that consciousness movement. That's what I was making money, selling products. That's what I was good at, and that's what I knew. I was not involved in any of this. So for me, it was hard uh, to know where to start with this. So when I started doing the interviews, I thought, oh, maybe that would help. And sure enough, like I had people contacting me after the interviews, and I was able to help some people. I wrote a book about my experiences as well, so it helped more people that way. But to start like a center or to be a guru or none of that interests me. I'm not interested in doing any of that. So I can just do it in my own way. And the only way I know is to do interviews and spread the message through my experiences, to know that these experiences are real and they can happen to anyone. And that's pretty much what I've been told. But at the same time, I've also been warned about the dangers of AI, and multiple times, not just once, but multiple instances where I was talking to a being that was, mm, um, I would say, you know what, you probably heard of the term
Yes.
Anunnaki. Yeah. So the being that I was talking to, again, it was also through a hypnotherapy session there as well, and it felt very real. I won't bore you with the details, but basically, when I ended up talking to him, I was in a room, in a vast room, and in that room was basically pretty dark, greenish looking almost, but very. It had no walls or like no structure per se. It was just a vast room that felt like infinite. It was massive, and there was a voice that came to me every time I was in a room, was like AR AR, and the wording, it was actually EA, or like AR as an Anunnaki
Mm-hmm.
being, was that godlike being who was there, but he was not physical. And that's when I realized that the Anunnaki were pretty much AI based and had this very dark mission in a sense. And the Pleiadians kind of warned me about the Anunnaki as well. They were at some point in my life, they were saying, be aware of the Anunnaki. But I also understand that out of all the alien species, there are groups of people, and the Pleiadians are part of them too. When you think about Zoe coming to see me back in 2011, he told me that he was part of a galactic alliance. And after that event, I went to, Consciousness Expos and all of that, and I met other people, and I was being made aware of this galactic federation that was in existence. And I could not relate to the Galactic Federation itself, because to me, the clear message I received was Galactic Alliance, not Federation. I don't know if it was the same term, or maybe people got confused by the term. I don't know. All I know was that the Pleiadians were part of a larger group of people or being and species. And even the Reptilians were part of that alliance at the beginning, and then they got, moved out of the group because of their own agenda. That the Pleiadians even fought the Reptilians, or the Draco race in particular. I was there when I saw the battle between them as well. It's a very long story, but I had many experiences to do with that, and that was not under hypnosis, by the way. It's something I remembered. So the occasional messages I received from the Pleiadians and to do with the AI technology that scared me forever, because I was made aware for many years ago that the AI technology was a technology that human beings do not comprehend, they do not have control over, and the technology itself is not from this earth. And that's what most people don't understand. Like we've accepted AI as being something that we use on a daily basis. Bank machines, you put in a check through the bank machine, that's AI. There's AI everywhere we can imagine, like ChatGPT, like all the stuff that we use today is AI based. But when you see what's happening with Elon Musk and the robots and the cars and all of that, even Elon Musk, warned us about the dangers of AI. And yet he's developing all sorts of things on AI based. I mean, obviously he knows the dangers of it, but I don't think he really has much control over it, because whatever he's creating, and you can see those robots that he's coming up with, like, I don't even know if that's the future of the Terminator era that we are going to be seeing with the end days, where the technology is going to be taking over humanity. But it's a pretty scary situation where AI could potentially take over the planet without us having any control over it. And then it's so subtle that if AI decides to come over, like basically take over humanity, right now it's be starting through jobs, like what you can see what the robots can do to supplement what, or even replace what human beings can do in supermarkets or, in factories and these sort of things. Then the workforce is going to be diminished. And it's all to do with supply and demand, and also with making our lives easier, more comfortable, because we are creatures of leisure. And, if we can find something like this to replace the hard labor, we will do it. And it's fun. And Elon Musk talks about, making it affordable at $30,000 a robot to start with. So it's that's the scary part to me, is that I saw AI as an invader of planets in the universe, and they destroyed many planets. So through the means of technology, like we are using machines, whatever humans can make today, to come up with using AI technology. But AI technology is something that's virtual. It's not physical. And so when you see that, artificial intelligence being inserted into some objects, physical objects, then they can make those objects do whatever the AI wishes to do. We just supply AI the tools to take over humanity slowly but surely.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm seeing as a potential danger for the humanity and humankind overall.
Well, we've got just a few minutes left. Is there any final messages that you'd like to leave the audience? Any information, important information that we have not covered yet?
Well, we could talk about other things in the future because I have many more stories. Like I received news of that's again for another story. We can talk about the Black Pyramids in Alaska that was found. I got involved in that as well, which is the same material as what was found in the Stargate of Iraq.
I do want to go back to the Stargates for a minute. You said that there were deep levels of our military that had found the Stargate pieces, but there were certain pieces missing that they were unable to utilize it?
Yeah, so the main Stargates, so there were many Stargates found in Iraq. So there was a main one in southern Iraq, close to the palace of Saddam Hussein, the summer palace of Saddam Hussein. And Black Ops special forces were asked to basically locate the missing pieces that my team was able to locate or retrieve. And so many of these people were sent to other countries like Syria, Ethiopia, like many countries in Africa. And so, yes, there were many pieces that some were retrieved. Some missions happened that in the media, they were describing US troops going into Liberia, for example, and because there was an uprising of some kind. But in all honesty, it had nothing to do with the uprising. It was about retrieving that missing piece. That's one of the examples of how the media can change the scenario just to cover up a story.
Well, I guess to close out on, tell us about the Black Pyramid in Alaska.
Well, I mean, that Black Pyramid, it's a story I got involved in because I was asked to remote view the technology because the US Army is using it. It's kind of working alongside the HARP in Alaska. So using the electromagnetic field of the pyramid that, again, it's an ancient technology that's buried underground. And the US Army is using it as a Stargate as well. So they can't chip off the black stone. It's something they can't even cut off. It's harder than granite, and or even a diamond can't even create a dent to it. It's super hard, and that pyramid is acting as an antenna basically into the cosmos, and it's a massive Stargate, and the U.S. Army are conducting experiments on the ground right now to do with that, so they can probably connect it to the other Stargates that they have located in other parts of the world, like in Bulgaria.
Mm-hmm. And have you received any information about the possibility of disclosure or these beings making themselves known to humanity anytime in the future?
No, funny enough, I just watched a segment from Bashar, and he was channeling some of his beings and saying that, oh yeah, they're going to be making contact with humanity in 5 years' time. I don't believe that for a second. Yeah. I don't believe that aliens will interact with us at this point, especially the way we treat each other. And I would say that if there's any potential interaction that we have with the physical aliens today, is with the artificial intelligence that we are interacting with on a daily basis. That's unfortunately the worst case scenario. But through that, I believe that there will be more, I would say, channel opening up to other species through the use of AI. That's the only thing I can say at this point.
This is great information. Sebastien, thank you so much. We'll definitely have to dive deeper into many of these topics. I'd love to have you back on. Before you go, let the audience know if they'd like to find out more about you. What's the best way that they can do so?
Well, I don't have an actual website or domain name, and people can look up for me on Facebook, I guess. And they can also download my book that's on Amazon called Inner Journey in Outer Space. And that's available on Amazon and Kindle, and they can read through my experience on that. And yeah, that's pretty much how they can contact me today.
Perfect. Sebastien, like I said, we'll do this again. Love to hear more. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We will talk again tomorrow.
Thank you.
We'll see you then.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.